little wiener dogs all the way to the great big Great Dane. You've seen the Great Dane. It kind of scare you the first time you see it. I know it's kind of scared me, that sort of thing. But, there's a variety of dogs under the classification of canine.
Yeah.
So that's microevolution, where they adapt and they mold and they adjust to fit their surroundings through interbreeding, what have you, and that sort of thing happens. We all unanimously agree that you have various derivatives of canines. However, you don't go from a cat to a canine.
Right.
You don't go from a canine to a monkey. That's a process called macroevolution. And macroevolution has never, ever, ever been proven as to occur naturally on its own without some type of outside direct conscious interference.
Right. You are right. Yes.
So basically, in a nutshell, there's been no intermediate species found, no evidence in the fossil records for any animal flipping from a dinosaur to a bird or any sort of this foolishness. The only thing that they have that they can even point to, that's the evolutionary scientists, is the one that they call Archaeopteryx. It's supposed to be this bird creature that's the mixture between a reptile and a bird. Now, that's their one intermediate fossil that they claim that they found, and there are several beliefs about Archaeopteryx. Archaeopteryx is either believed to be outright a fraud or a hoax. They believe, first of all, the three known fossils of Archaeopteryx were all found in the same place, relatively around the same time in a quarry up in England. The other thing is, when they examined it, they noticed that the feathers and the structuring of the feathers were not in a way, or not grown in a way so that it would have appeared to have grown naturally on the animal. It's as if this thing was actually doctored up. They took some type of reptile fossil and added wings to it, or added the imprints of wings to it. The other simple fact of the matter is, even if you do embrace the idea that Archaeopteryx is a true fossil, the bottom line is it doesn't qualify to be an intermediate. For one thing, a lot of the scientists point to the fact, well, it's got teeth, and it's got reptile-like features, and it actually has teeth and feathers at the same time. Well, there are actually species of birds that have teeth. So that doesn't necessarily make it a reptile. It certainly doesn't make it a dinosaur. It just means it's a very unusual bird, okay, at most, and a hoax at absolute worst. So that's
I've got to interject something here.
Sure.
If anybody's ever been pinched by a goose, they will think that the bird has teeth. Oh, ouch.
Yes, ma'am. And the thing is, Archaeopteryx has about the chance of being some intermediate fossil as a goose, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because that's about the likelihood, if it's even truly actually the fossil remains of some actual animal.
Yeah.
Some scientists went in who were not Christians. They went in and they said, we're going to examine this thing to see if it's real or not. And many of them reported, this thing is not real. If you want more information on that, that's in the book Creation by Grant Jeffrey. He has a whole spread on this Archaeopteryx intermediate fossil. And there's a lot of things out there on the computer that you can get into. But at any rate, I want to kind of interject that to make it very clear that when you're dealing with this, when you watch TV, when you see these specials, when they come on, these channels and things, and they talk about all these fossils and how they evolved, that's pure nonsense. It's pure fiction. They're making it up. The fossils are real for the most part, but what they're saying happened with the fossils is not real at all, and they can't prove it at all. There have been no intermediate species, fossils between the fossils that prove evolution at all. However, that fossil record does nothing but explain and back up and verify and confirm what the Bible says. Given what the Bible claims, you should not find any intermediate fossils, fossils between the fossils to make some type of macroevolutionary case, and you don't. And that proves, once again, that the Bible is accurate. It says very definitively that God created all things. Specifically, by His Word, He spoke things forth in the heavens and the earth in Psalm chapter 33. And sure enough, the fossil record speaks very clearly that everything was formed at once, that suddenly you have these animals on the scene, and suddenly they stay within their own groups. They might have some variation within that group, but they stay very clearly after their own kind.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the fossil record in a nutshell against the evolutionary argument and for creation by a holy, loving God. Number two, you have 8 men. Now, this one is absolute. It's almost laughable when you look at it. If it weren't so sad that people were actually sucked into this thing, it would be a joke.
I think we have a bunch of them up in Washington, D.C. They're acting that way. They're making such foolish decisions. It's insane.
But unfortunately, it's sad to say, man, but, when you don't have a mindset or a mentality whereby you have a holy, loving God who has created all things, anything goes.
That's right.
It's all about what we want. It's all about us. Even the guy, famous atheist Aldous Huxley, he actually wrote in Confessions of a Professional Atheist, he wrote, and this is a paraphrase, this is in Grant Jeffrey's Creation book, he said in so many words, I really didn't want there to be a God. I didn't want him to exist, so I basically just wrote as if he didn't exist. I made the whole thing up. Now, you got to understand who Aldous Huxley is. Huxley is supposedly the bulldog, quote-unquote, of Charles Darwin. He took Darwin's basic premise, the basic idea of evolution, and he's the one who really put it out there and really promoted the strongest. So this guy Huxley is no joke when it comes to history of science. Yeah. Well, Huxley is basically saying, in so many words, I didn't want God to exist. I didn't care, and I went and found some type of evidence or proof to verify the fact that God didn't exist. Not only that, Huxley went on to say the reason why I didn't want it to exist, I didn't want God to tell me how to live my life. I didn't want him clamping his morality down on me. I wanted to live the most sensual life that I wanted to live, and that's all I wanted out of this thing. This kind of foolish motive to promote something that you know is a lie. So you have that. Not only that, you had all kinds of guys who throughout history, speaking of government, who have influenced governments around the world embracing evolutionary doctrine. For example, Karl Marx. He was not directly influenced by it, but he actually wrote to his companion, Fred Engels, when he was making the Communist Manifesto, I've read Darwin. He's doing in science what I'm trying to do in the social realm. I'm embracing this. I'm reading this. I'm influenced. He was actually appraising Charles Darwin for what he was reading, writing. Actually, Adolf Hitler and the guys who were under him, Mengele and all those guys in World War II who did all kinds of atrocities, most of which we can't even speak of. These guys were heavily, heavily, heavily influenced by evolutionary thought and evolutionary doctrine. Their whole premise of the biology of a being actually influenced by evolution and thus influencing their social status and where they fall in the social realm. So you see communism, you see Nazi fascism, all influenced heavily, heavily, heavily by evolution. And lo and behold, you see a lot of those things, unfortunately, trickling right into the system that we have in this country today.
Yes, you're right.
And they're actively promoting this thing, whether you look at these movies and films, whether you look at the policies, it implies we don't have to answer to anybody but ourselves, and we're going to do what we want to do, and we don't really care. Even when you look at, just this almost massacre that they're doing to natural resources, where they're totally decimating and desecrating all the natural resources. We don't care how much oil and gas we use. We could make more efficient cars and things like that that would be more environmentally safe, but we don't really care. We're going to do whatever we want to do because it's us. We're in charge. We're the only ones here. We answer to no one, and aggression rules. And that's all survival of the fittest. That's all evolutionary thought and evolutionary doctrine, and they use this foolishness like 8 men to back it up.
Wasn't that, Yusef, what the Nazis were all about, aggression?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, Hitler was actually saying, you give me the music of a nation, I'll control the youth. I want them to be devoid of conscience. I want them to be basically intellectual animals. Yeah. That's literally what he was trying to produce, and he actually, he and his group invented something called monarch mind control. And what that is what they do is they actually induce a traumatic experience in a child. some type of, overheard a little bit of what you and Pasteur were talking about in his interview about depression, that sort of thing, and how these traumatic events can create depression. Well, these guys mastered the technique of creating trauma in children as a trigger point and putting in them